The thing holding you back has nothing to do with talent. Think about the last time you watched someone who was genuinely excellent at something. A speaker who held a room effortlessly. A writer whose sentences felt inevitable. Someone in your field who just seemed to get it in a way that made your own efforts feel small. And somewhere in that moment of admiration, a quiet thought arrived. They're just built differently. It felt true. It felt obvious. It felt like an explanation. But here's what that thought was actually doing. It was letting you off the hook. Because if they're built differently, if what they have is something you either were or weren't born with, then the gap between you and them is not your fault. And more importantly, it's not your responsibility to close it. That thought feels like an observation. It functions like a cage. And almost everything holding you back from the life you're capable of living is living inside it. In 1984, a young pianist named Lang Lang watched a cartoon, Tom from Tom and Jerry, playing Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2 with impossible speed and precision. He became obsessed, not because he was gifted. His first teacher told his father he had no talent and should quit. But he practiced anyway, every day, for years. By his 20s, he was standing ovations at Carnegie Hall. By his 30s, he was considered one of the greatest pianists alive. The teacher who said he had no talent was half right. He didn't have talent. He built it. In 1993, psychologist Anders Ericsson studied violinists at the Berlin Academy of Music. He separated them into 3 groups: the merely good, the very good, and the elite. He expected to find differences in natural ability. What he found was almost entirely about hours. The elite performers had accumulated roughly 10,000 hours of deliberate practice by age 20. The merely good, about 4,000. The difference wasn't talent. It was time. And what they chose to do with it. Ericsson studied experts across domains after that: chess players, surgeons, athletes, musicians. Same pattern, everywhere. What looks like talent from the outside is almost always practice that happened before you were watching. Talent is what people see on stage. Practice is what happens in the empty room. This matters because the talent myth isn't just wrong. It's actively harmful. When you attribute someone's excellence to a gift they were born with, you simultaneously explain your own limitations as something equally fixed. You convert a gap that could be closed into a fact about who you are. And then you stop. Not dramatically, not with a decision. You just quietly stop. In the 1980s, psychologist Carol Dweck noticed something strange. When faced with a difficult problem, some children leaned in. They tried harder, got more creative, seemed energized by the difficulty. Others shut down immediately. I'm not good at this. I'm just not smart enough. Same problem. Completely different response. What she found came down to a single belief. Can I get better at this? Children who believed abilities were fixed interpreted struggle as evidence the fixed ability wasn't there. Difficulty meant, this isn't for me. Children who believed abilities could grow read the same struggle differently. Difficulty meant, I'm not there yet. 3 words. Not yet. Here's what makes this genuinely important. The mindset isn't about optimism. It's about what you believe struggle means. If struggle means you lack the talent, you will avoid it, escape it, explain it away. If struggle means you're building something, you will stay in it long enough for something to actually change. The belief determines the behavior. The behavior determines the outcome. And the belief was probably given to you by someone who had no idea what they were actually installing. Here's a line worth sitting with. You are not someone who lacks talent. You are someone who hasn't accumulated enough repetitions yet. That's not a motivational refrain. That's an accurate description of where you actually are. The gap is real, but it is made of something you can actually do something about. Here's a distinction that changes everything. Most people are not afraid of failure. They failed before. They know they can survive it. What they're afraid of is public failure. Failure with an audience. The moment when someone they respect watches them try and fall short. This fear has a name in psychology: evaluation apprehension. And it is extraordinarily powerful. Because humans are social animals, wired over millions of years to care intensely about standing in the group. For most of human history, social rejection wasn't uncomfortable. It was dangerous. So the brain developed a powerful threat detection system for social evaluation. And that system does not distinguish between a predator and a comment section. It fires the same alarm. Which means the person who wants to start a business, write publicly, speak on a stage, is fighting a survival alarm. Every single time they consider being seen in an imperfect state. This is not weakness. This is biology. But here's what changes everything. The people who build something extraordinary are not the people who stopped feeling that alarm. They're the people who learned to act while it was ringing. They posted the imperfect work. They gave the awkward talk. They sent the email before they felt ready. Not because it felt safe. Because they understood that the only way to stop fearing the audience is to get enough reps in front of one. Before we talk about perfectionism, a quick reframe that most people miss. Perfectionism is not about standards. It's about fear of measurement. As long as the work is unfinished, it cannot be judged. As long as it cannot be judged, the verdict is still open. Keep that in mind for what comes next. Perfectionism is not a charming quirk. It is not a sign of high standards. It is avoidance with excellent branding. Here's how to tell the difference between genuine high standards and perfectionism. High standards produce output imperfect, improved iteratively, released into the world. Perfectionism produces delay. The perfectionist is always almost ready, always one revision away from beginning, always waiting for conditions that will never fully arrive. And underneath the careful planning, the endless refinement, is a very simple calculation. If I never fully try, I never fully fail. The unfinished project is still possible. The unsent application could still succeed. The business not yet started remains, in imagination, perfect. The moment any of those things enter the real world, they become vulnerable. Perfectionism keeps that moment from arriving. Indefinitely. The people who break through it don't lower their standards. They change what they measure. Instead of measuring the quality of the output, they measure the quality of the attempt. Did I show up? Did I try? Did I put something real into the world today? A consistent imperfect attempt, made daily, over years, will always outperform the perfect attempt that never arrives. Always. The people you most admire for their discipline are probably not more motivated than you. They may be less motivated on any given day. Because motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable narrators. They peak and crash in response to sleep, weather, the last thing someone said to you. Building a life around motivation is like building a house on a tide. It will hold until it doesn't. The people who build things that last have made the same quiet shift. They stopped waiting to feel like doing the work. They started treating the work as something entirely separate from feeling. Because the brain will always construct a reasonable case for why today is not the right day. Too tired, too distracted, not in the right headspace. The case is always coherent. It is almost never true. Action produces motivation far more reliably than motivation produces action. The feeling of wanting to work arrives most consistently after you've already started, not before. The discipline is in starting before the feeling arrives. Every time. Without waiting for permission from your own mood. There's a version of self-improvement that is entirely about the individual. Your mindset, your choices, your willpower. And while those things matter, there's a force shaping all of them that almost never gets the attention it deserves. The environment you live inside. Two people with identical intentions to change. One keeps life exactly as it's always been. One spends an hour redesigning what's visible, accessible, easy to reach. 3 months later, their results will be radically different. Not because of discipline. Because of what required discipline and what didn't. Behavioral scientists call this choice architecture. The design of your environment determines the path of least resistance. And humans, reliably, take the path of least resistance. This is not a character flaw. It is how cognition works under constant pressure. The people who change their lives most effectively are not the ones who fight their environment hardest. They're the ones who stop fighting it and redesign it instead. They make the right behavior easy. They make the wrong behavior inconvenient. They surround themselves with people for whom the habits they want are already normal. Because the fastest way to change what feels natural to you is to change what's normal around you. Excellence is not an event. It is an accumulation. Not through inspiration, but through showing up. Again, when it's interesting and when it's tedious, when progress is visible and when it isn't, when you feel like it and especially when you don't. A 1% improvement compounded daily becomes 37 times better over a year. Not through intensity, through continuity. The person who practices 45 minutes every single day will, over 5 years, accumulate more than 1,000 hours of deliberate repetition. They will not feel talented while doing it. They will feel ordinary. They will feel slow. They will occasionally wonder if any of it is working. And then one day, someone will watch them and think, they're just built differently. The story Van Gogh. Most people think of Van Gogh as a tortured genius, a natural, someone who simply saw the world differently from birth. What most people don't know. Van Gogh didn't start painting until he was 27 years old. His early work was clumsy, dark, technically unremarkable. He wrote to his brother Theo constantly letters full of doubt, the feeling of being behind, the quiet fear that others had something he simply lacked. But he painted every day. Through poverty, through illness, through rejection so consistent it would have ended most people. In the decade that followed, he produced over 2,000 works. The paintings that now sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. The ones that look like they could only have come from someone born to make them, were made in the last 2 years of his life, after a decade of showing up. What looks like genius from the outside was 10 years of a man refusing to accept that the gap was permanent. Here's what I want you to take from this. The story that talent decides it, that some people are simply built for success and others aren't, is one of the most comforting stories in existence. Because if it's true, nothing is required of you. The gap makes sense. The ceiling is real. The limitation is simply a fact about who you are. You can stop, but it isn't true. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is made almost entirely of time and repetition. Not talent you don't have, not gifts you weren't given, not a version of yourself that was chosen and a version that wasn't. Just time, and what you choose to do with it. The person you admire most, the one who makes it look effortless, who seems to operate on an entirely different level, was at some point exactly where you are now. Uncertain, slow, wondering if the gap would ever close. They just kept going. And the only question that has ever actually separated the people who close the gap from the people who don't is whether you will too. You are not someone who lacks talent. You are someone who hasn't started yet, or someone who started and stopped too soon. The empty room is still there. The repetitions are still available. Talent explains very little. Time explains almost everything. Go use yours. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up. Leave a comment and click the button to subscribe.